John Niamori.
Okay. Oh, wow. Hey, John Niamori. I like that. That's a real quick one. I like that. That's good. Okay. All right. Okay, there's a lot of people here tonight. There's a lot of people who've heard this before, or at least have seen me before, and there's a lot of people here who have not. So I want to try and give you the best of what I have to offer. So I grew up surrounded by a family of Italians back in Hudson County that, to make a long story short, I felt that these people deserved to be written about. The problem was none of them liked to be written about. So I had to wait a long time to write this book, and I did. So I'm going to read a couple of different sections from it tonight. The ones I think that you find to be most informative. For those of you who might have heard this section before, I apologize, and I will give you something that you've never heard before, or unless you've read the book out loud and then you've heard it. Like all children, I was influenced by the things around me during the formative years. Some children grow up in a family of doctors, lawyers, investment bankers, owners of small and large businesses, police chiefs, insurance salesmen, stockbrokers, corporate executives, or small town and big city politicians. If something went wrong in their family, they usually blamed it on families like mine, or they came to families like mine for help. In my immediate family, there were no doctors, lawyers, investment bankers, and so on. This is my story based on actual events of living on the fringe of what some people call the mafia. You see, several members of my immediate family were connected. Connected simply means that through blood, honor, or business, you have a direct connection to the Cosa Nostra, the mafia, our thing, La Familia, the mob. And those members of my family made a very comfortable living for many, many years through this affiliation. I thought about becoming more involved when I was in my early 20s, but at the time, it was the mid-1970s. I was a professional musician and having too much fun living the rock and roll lifestyle. I was living every dream of most of my high school and college buddies, and at the time, that mattered. So why would I want to cut my hair, wear dark suits and ties, and take the chance of getting whacked? Instead, I decided to watch the guys from the sidelines. I was able to enjoy the best of a few worlds. I was having my little slice of rock and roll success. I had a great social and family life. I got to play with my connected relatives, and I also got to hang with the boys from Hudson County. I got to be a part of the games, the hustles, the respect, the scams, the federal investigations, the women, the stories, the parties, and the cash. I got to do some wild things, and I got to meet some very interesting and unique people. A lot of them aren't with us anymore. Most of them are dead. A couple of them had to leave the area and can't, shouldn't, don't want to come back. Some are in state and federal penitentiaries and will be for years. A few of them were able to survive. I run across a couple of the survivors from time to time. And then there's my family. Round one. I'm going to make this a long one. Round one. Christ, I hate flying, especially after all the time I spent in the air during the early 1970s. It was Friday, October 9th, 1998. It would have been John Lennon's 58th birthday. There I was, sitting alone in the back of a 9-passenger stretch, clad in jeans, a pair of sneakers, and a knitted sweater that I picked up in Laguna Beach a few weeks earlier. I opened the rear window, slid on my sunglasses, looked outside and lit a joint as the limo headed down New Jersey's Garden State Parkway to get me to Newark International Airport for my 9:35 a.m. flight. I was never very good with alcohol, so an occasional joint always took off the edge when I was on my way to an airport. Besides, it was only 8 in the morning, much too early for a martini. And as part of my job, I had to fly. A lot. At the time, I was working for a very large New York insurance company. When I was hired, they wanted someone to work with a market that most corporations and conglomerates have problems relating to: unions. This particular trip was to oversee the company's presence at the largest public employees benefit convention in the country. Over 6,000 representatives were attending, and I, as one of the guest speakers, would be spouting about the need that would ultimately be filled by using my company's program. I was very good in front of large groups. I had a lot of practice at that. My other function on this trip was to host an extravagant hospitality bash in my hotel suite for several officials from large national unions. I had a lot of practice with that, too. By the time the limo arrived at the airport and the driver opened my door, I was buzzed. I handed the red cap $10 as he took my bags from the trunk. Even stoned, I had the robotics down. He asked to see my ticket and picture ID, and then he hit me with the standard security questions, to which I gave the standard passenger responses. Yes, I packed my own bags. No, no one known or unknown to me gave me anything to carry. And yes, they've been in my possession since I packed them. Then I headed into Terminal C. It made me recall a time before America worried about terrorists, when we could show up 20 minutes before a flight and not have to show ID or pass through metal detectors in order to board a plane. I was good for more than 20 trips a year, but this particular one had me thinking. It had me thinking a lot. As I took my first class seat aboard Continental's Flight 1679, it really began to sink in that it had been 21 years since I was in Las Vegas. Vegas. 21 years. Right down to the month. Throughout the nearly 5-hour flight, I opened my laptop and did some work, read a couple of magazines, drank 3 Bloody Marys, and socialized with the flight attendants, who used to be called stewardesses. I did anything to avoid thinking about Vegas. As the pilot brought the plane down low so we could see the Grand Canyon, it all started to come back to me. When we passed over Lake Mead and the Hoover Dam, I knew it was less than a half hour before I'd be hearing those high-pitched bells of the slot machines in the airport. Business would only keep me here for 3 days, so why did I make plans for 6? Because of family. My cousin and godfather, Gerald, better known as Jerry, along with his wife and mother, moved here about 3 years ago after almost 20 years in Palm Springs, and I wanted to spend some time with them. If there was anyone that I'd want to be with in Vegas, it would be with Jerry. As the plane circled, I looked out the window and saw a skyline and landscape that was dramatically different from the first time I was here on my own in late August of 1975. Back then, there was nothing. There were small patches of civilization here and there, but it was desolate until you actually got within a mile of the Strip. Now, there are miles of hotels, casinos, homes, highways, shopping centers, golf courses, and housing developments. There doesn't seem to be 1 square foot of unused property in this old desert oasis. Over the years, I had read the articles and seen the TV specials about how Las Vegas had grown and how it now resembled a family theme park with rides and circus acts for the kids, shops and pools for the wives, and casinos and hookers for the dads. But the allure of the decadence, of the wild nights with Frank, Dean, and Sammy, the rare Elvis and Howard Hughes sightings, the coolness, the glitz, the excitement, that was all gone. Inside, I never really cared about what the town had become because as far as I was concerned, I was never coming back here anyway. When the plane touched down, everyone applauded. I slowly shook my head and smiled. The applause triggered a flood of memories as the plane taxied to the terminal and the canopy approached us. This surely wasn't the same McCarran Airport I had flown into 22 times over 26 months during the mid-1970s. It used to take 10 minutes to get through this airport. Now it took more than 30. But eventually, I found my luggage and was in the Hertz van headed to my rented Lincoln. I checked into a $1,900 a night penthouse suite at the Mirage, and as soon as the bellman left the room, I picked up a phone to make the call. Jerry, I'm here. What you think, Juan? After all these years, he still called me Juan. It's changed since the last time you saw it, huh? He asked as I opened the remote-controlled curtains to look out over the strip. I let out a small, nervous laugh. Only Jerry knew what that laugh meant. Vegas, for me, existed in Vegas, for me, existed in a previous lifetime. It was October of 1977. My last memory of this town was the morning two towering, well-dressed muscle men and their equally well-dressed boss introduced to me simply as Mr. Smith, escorted me into a waiting limousine. As I slid into the rear seat, I saw another guy sitting there. He looked nervous and appeared to have been punched around a bit. He didn't speak when I nodded to him. He just turned and looked out the side window. Mr. Smith sat in the front with the driver. His men sat facing me and the other guy. No one was smiling. We only drove for about 15 or 20 minutes before we were surrounded by sand and brush. The car pulled off the paved road and continued on the sand for about a half mile before stopping. The odd part was that the low skyline of the strip wasn't that far away. Mr. Smith got out and opened the side passenger rear door. The driver stayed in the car as Mr. Smith, his guys, the quiet passenger, and I stood in the morning sun. Mr. Smith looked directly at me and asked, "Any idea why I brought the two of you out here?" I looked at the other guy. He started to weep. I looked at Mr. Smith and replied, "Nope, no idea." With that, Mr. Smith pointed to the guy and said, "You see this piece of shit? He tried scamming one of the casinos too." With that, one of Smith's men pulled out a pistol and shot the guy in the head. I jumped at the sound, then froze at the sight of the guy falling to the ground, motionless, with blood spurting from the hole in his skull. It all happened within a second. Mr. Smith, now flanked by the steroid twins, came close to me and pushed his finger deeper into my chest with each word as he told me to get your fucking ass out of Vegas and go back to Jersey on the next fucking plane. 'Cause if you're not out of your room and out of Vegas by noon, your body will be in a fucking hole in this desert by tonight, and they'll never find you. And tell Casiano to keep Tommy Dolan out of this town. How long did he think we were going to let you take our money? Now walk your guinea ass back to the hotel, pack your shit, and disappear." Then he signaled his men. One grabbed me from behind, the other punched me in the stomach. I collapsed against the limo and slid to the ground as Mr. Smith turned and slid into the back seat. His boys stared at me as if they were taking a mental picture, and then, one at a time, they followed their boss. The limo pulled away, leaving me in a cloud of dust and next to a dead guy. Now, Vegas is a place to bring your family. In front of my hotel, there was a man-made volcano with scheduled eruptions. Bugsy Siegel never would have believed this. Okay, now I'm going to read a little chunk of a later chapter, because those two chapters some people in this room have heard already, and I didn't want to let those who haven't heard it yet not hear it. So I'll just keep you about another 5 minutes or so, maybe, if I can read it fairly fast. I'll tell you about a few people first, because since you're coming in about 2/3 of the way through the book, there's some characters you'll hear about that, obviously not hearing earlier chapters, you don't know. Casiano is the boss. So he'll be referenced, Rocco Casiano. Sal Della Osa was his right-hand man. Sal would kill you if you looked at him the wrong way, or if Rocco told him to kill you, or told him to kill anybody. Around this time, Rocco was, he had a trial. The state police tried to bring him to court to stand for 40 years, up from 40 years to life in prison for something he had done. And Rocco came to me because like it said, I used to be a musician, if you didn't know that. And I had very good ears at that time to hear edits on tape recordings. And he gave me a tape recording that the state police had given him as evidence. And I was fortunate enough to hear that the tape had been edited. So because we were able to prove that in court, instead of Rocco going to jail for 40 years, he was fined $1,000 for having an unlicensed shotgun in his house, and that was it. Because of that, he had taken me under his wing and considered me his godchild. So that had happened a few months prior to this event that's going to happen now. It was a cold afternoon in March of 1977 when I attended Paulie Romano's wedding. Hello, Paulie. Sorry about that, folks. I'm very sorry about that. Usually I start this by going, okay, everybody shut your cell phones.
Hudson County, right?
That's where the call was from, actually. This place ain't bugged one. Okay, sorry. It was a cold afternoon in March of 1977 when I attended Paulie Romano's wedding. Paulie and I went to high school together. I knew his father, Tony, was connected, but I had no idea to what level. It never really mattered to me, as they certainly had no idea of my affiliation. As my date and I took our seats, I noticed Salvatore Della Osa sitting with 5 other men at a rear table. 2 of them were the Renoro brothers, Sonny and Marco, who inherited Jerry's territory. I was introduced to them as at the party Casiano threw for me a couple of months earlier. It didn't take long for them to see me, and I was waved over to their table. For the first time, I was introduced to Sal Della Osa. He stood up, shook my hand, and we kissed each other on the cheek. Face to face, he was several inches taller than me, and when we hugged, I could feel that his body was all muscle. I also felt a chunk of metal against his chest. At some point during that evening, Tony Romano pulled me aside and whispered, "Salvatore told me about you and Rocco and the good thing you did for him." He leaned forward and kissed me on the cheek as a show of respect, then continued, "I'd like you to come to my place in Secaucus after the reception. I'm having a small private party for some of my friends." Then he gave me a knowing wink. "You may want to bring your date home first," he paused and smiled. "There's going to be other entertainment there." I didn't respond, but returned the smile. He whispered, "I got a condo in Harmon Towers. Just keep it to yourself. Tell the doorman you're there to see me, and he'll send you up." Then he stepped back and proudly said, "Now go enjoy my son's wedding." Apparently, Tony must have been a bit more active in the business than I thought, because about 15 minutes later, I walked into the men's room to find Della Osa, the Renoro brothers, Tony Romano, and a couple of other guys comparing pistols. Everyone was comparing their .38s and 9mm like they were schoolboys showing off their dicks in the bathroom. But when Salvatore Della Osa put his hand in his jacket and pulled out his monstrous Colt 45 automatic, the men stood back in awe. They looked upon it as if it were a holy relic. Standing in this bathroom watching these grown men comparing their guns was one thing, but when Salvatore whipped out his piece, I was amazed how they marveled at its magnificence. I was glad I didn't take out my little .25. After the reception, I brought my date home and drove to Secaucus. As I walked through the Harmon Towers lobby towards the elevator, I saw Salvatore and another man. They were talking and obviously knew one another. Sal saw me. It was too late to turn and leave. "Hey, kid, you going to Tony's party too?" "Yeah," I answered with a smile as I walked toward them. The elevator doors opened and we stepped inside. As they closed, he turned to me and said, "Now you know not to say anything to our friend about me being at this party, right?" I didn't answer, but raised an eyebrow. "Listen, kid, there are some things going on up there that he won't like. You know what I mean?" he said sternly, but with a smile. But before I could answer, his hand went into his jacket and pulled out his .45 caliber cannon, cocked back the hammer, and put the barrel gently to the side of my head. I froze. He started laughing and said to his friend, "You know, if Rocco didn't love this little fucking guy, I'd kill him just for being Jerry's godson." The friend calmly stood there and smiled. I guess seeing a guy with a gun to his head wasn't something new for him. But this was a whole new experience for me. Then Della Osa put his lips close to my ear and whispered, "I don't know what the fuck happened that night last July, but Rocco was very nervous until your cousin moved to Palm Springs. I had a feeling Jerry was going to hit Rocco, and that would have been bad." He backed up a bit so I could see his face and continued, "But whatever it was, you saved Rocco's ass from going to prison. And for that, I gotta respect you. But if I find out he knows I'm here, the next time you see this gun, it's gonna be pointed in the same place, and I'm gonna use it. You got that? You capiche?" He backed away from me and smiled. I nodded. He pulled the gun away, gently released the hammer, and slipped it back into his shoulder holster. I didn't move my body. I was still in shock. I was a heartbeat away from having my brain splattered all over the inside of an elevator simply because I was going to a party attended by someone who shouldn't have been there in the first place. The elevator doors opened. "Now come on, let's go have a good time," he said as he put his arm around me and led me down the hall. I tried not to let him notice my legs wobbling. Once we walked into the condo, it didn't take long for me to understand Salvatore's reason for keeping his presence here. Once we walked into the condo, it didn't take long for me to understand Salvatore's reason for keeping his presence here quiet. I immediately caught the smell of marijuana while others were snorting unending lines of coke off the top of the Yamaha Baby Grand. All of this took place as a dozen naked women walked throughout the party, occasionally taking one or two men into one of the 3 bedrooms. To Rocco Casiano, drugs within his crew were verboten. Jerry, Mike, and Taz made that very clear several times. I had assumed they had smelled recently smoked pot on me on more than one occasion when they reminded me about it. Sal kept an eye on me, and I kept one on him. Neither of us went into the bedrooms or got high, and we departed together after an hour or so. "You've been following the papers over the last few weeks?" he asked as we rode the elevator down to the lobby. "No, I've been in L.A. most of the time. Why?" "Rocco's getting picked on by the feds and the state now. They're following us everywhere. The newspapers give him a headline every time he sneezes, and that's not good." "What's he gonna do?" I asked. Della Osa didn't answer. He just shook his head and shrugged his shoulders. As the elevator doors opened, I said, "Maybe he put on too much of a show during the state trial, and now they want to get him because of the way he made them look. He shouldn't have gone to the media, because now the law is going to put him in the spotlight. They may even try to make an example out of him." "Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of other people who think that way too." We hugged and kissed in the lobby before we stepped out into the cold late night air. As we walked separate ways to our cars, I laughed as I recalled that earlier that very night, the man I had just kissed had a gun to my head and said he would have blown me away just for being the godson of a guy he thought was out to kill his boss. What a life. What a crazy fucking life. Thank you very, very much. So, this is where I now say, any questions? And I certainly hope you do, because this is my favorite time. This is my favorite part. Nobody, huh? Cool, we're done. Any questions? Really? Come on, Louise. Nothing? She's known me since high school. She's got no questions.
No questions. I read the book. I know it all.
You lived it. You were there. You saw it. Anybody?
I have a
Nothing.
question.
Karen, thank you.
Do you plan on having a tour bus or a drive-by past some of the famous sites that are still here in New Jersey to accompany you?
That would be very cool.
It would be fun.
That would be very cool. Rosemary, you're on that.
Okay.
You're on that. A lot of the places are still around. A lot of the people are around too. So yes, sir.
What did you think of the Sopranos series, the reality of it?
The reality of it? Okay, I've told the story before. People ask me this. Okay. I'll start it off first by saying that, like I said, a lot of these guys are still alive that I know. And after I first wrote the manuscript, I went back to New Jersey when during the Sopranos, like second or third season, and this is no lie. You know, these are the real guys that I would sit and talk to. And we'd sit around and eat cannolis and drink espresso and stuff. And because The Sopranos was a new series at the time, I even asked myself, what do you think of this? These guys would rush home, no matter where they were on Sunday night, to watch what they considered a comedy. Let me give you some of the best examples. I'm sorry again if some of you have heard this before. Anybody here dedicated followers of The Sopranos? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. First episode of every season, what is the opening scene of what Tony does? What does he do?
Goes in the driveway.
He walks down the driveway in his underwear and his robe to get a newspaper.
Yeah.
He's a mob boss. Come on. Okay. And by the third episode of every season, he's worried about being shot. Meanwhile, he's walking down the driveway with his robe and his underwear, and he's got this big house with a wall, but there's no gate. So if he was going to get shot, he was going to get shot. That's the first big joke. Second one is, for every season other than the very last season, Tony drives himself around in an SUV. He's a mob boss. Mob bosses don't drive themselves anywhere. Secondly, they don't drive SUVs. Okay, what else? Okay, yeah, something else. Okay. The Bada Bing is a strip club on Route 17, really called Satin Dolls. Not that I've ever been there. But, where's Tony sit at the Bada Bing? About 50 feet from the front door with all his guys there? Really? Really? And what does he have right there on the bar? A phone. Did you ever try to talk on a phone in a strip club? With the dance music going on? What are you kidding me? Really? Okay. So, what do I think of The Sopranos? It's great if you live in Iowa. But you have no friggin' idea what it's really like back here in Jersey. Anybody else?
John, have you been threatened?
Have I ever been threatened? Oh no, I just had a friggin' gun put to my head.
No, I mean...
You mean since then? Since then?
Since you wrote the book.
Yeah, no, let me put it to you this way. Again, as I say, I did a couple of things. I didn't do anything stupid. First of all, the scam that changed, that when we got caught and we changed the laws in America. When I wrote the manuscript, before I even thought about getting it published, I brought the manuscript back to New Jersey, brought it to the correct people, and asked them to bring it to even higher up to make sure I wasn't pissing anybody off. It took about 3 months before I got the manuscript back with a little okay written over a folded piece of paper on top. and it was, I knew, you know, I wasn't giving up anything that was secret to the people or the feds or anything like that. The funny story is, you know, there's always this talk about, is there going to be a movie? Yes, there is a screenplay. It's out in Los Angeles, and we're hoping that you know, it'll get picked up. I sit around with these guys. They always have one question for me. All of these guys, whenever I meet with them, and I can see them. I saw them last week. I'll see them again next week. It doesn't really matter. They always ask me one question, time and time again. So, kid, who's gonna play me in the movie? That's all they ever want to know. That's all they ever want to know.
So they're cool about it.
Cool about it. They can't wait. They all want bit parts in it. You know, I just so you know, you see movies.
Cameos?
They're not speaking cameos, but you know, I'll just give you a couple of things. You know, you've seen Goodfellas, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, you've seen Goodfellas. Now I don't know if you remember a scene. There's a scene where the Ray Liotta character, he's still a child. He's still somewhat of a young teenager, and the Joe Pesci character, who's still a young boy at this point, when Ray Liotta, or the kid who plays him, gets picked up for selling the cigarettes illegally, and the Joe Pesci character goes running in to that room where they're all giving out yellow bandlon sweaters, and everybody's wearing the same sweater. All of those guys in that room were all guys. In the movie Casino, and this is a well-known fact. In the movie, I'm not telling you anything that you really don't know. In the movie Casino, there's a scene in Casino where Joe Pesci is talking to Ghazi. Ghazi's playing poker with some guy, or playing cards with some guy. Joe Pesci standing there. Robert De Niro comes in. This is like in a flashback scene, and he's giving the Ghazi a handful of cash that he won playing sports, betting sports. And he walks basically into a room about this size, past about 8 guys sitting around a bar drinking espresso. Every one of those guys was paid as technical advisors. There you go. That's the truth. So these guys, you know, all these guys, they watch these movies and they sit around and they laugh or they joke because they know what's real and what's not real, and they really. Let's just say that they like watching these movies, say from Godfather 1 up to, you know, Casino and stuff like that, a lot better than they liked watching Edward G. Robinson or Humphrey Bogart or, who was the other one? Edward G. Bogart and James Cagney. You know, watching those guys play mob guys. Because they were gangsters, but they really weren't members of a mob like what is portrayed from 1971 or 72 on. Anybody else? Yes?
Would you do it all over again? Not now, not in present. But if you could come back and just...
If I can go back to 1975,
Yeah,
be
would you
22 years old again?
Yes.
In a fucking heartbeat.
Would
I
you
was
do
22
that?
years old. When you're that age and your godfather tells you, don't worry, everything will be all right. And you were surrounded, and I grew up surrounded by these guys. I never felt threatened at all. I never felt that anything was going to go wrong. And even though I saw things go wrong for some other people, and they turned up dead, or they turned up dead in a hot tub or something, you know, when you're 22, 24 years old, you don't think it's ever going to happen to you. That's the truth.
So you loved that experience?
I just loved that, everything about it. I was a musician at that time. It was a great time. Everything about it was just cool. That's why I say it in the book many times. You know, looking back on it now, it really was the greatest one. It was the greatest time of my life. Absolutely.
Yes.
It really was.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Explain your relationship with Dave Toma.
You know, you always ask me that question.
I know, because nobody else asks.
Anybody here know who David Toma is? He was a cop in Newark back in the 60s. Made a name for himself. All right, made a name for himself, you know. Don't get me wrong. back in the 60s, they were busting people for $5 and $10 worth of pot, and you know, poor guys would go to jail for 10, 20 years. Now you get busted for $10 worth of pot, cop don't even write a ticket for you. Well, it's in California. But it's more of an inconvenience for the court, you know. But back then, this guy, you know, he would bust guys, you know, for taking numbers, the mom and pop stores on the corner. He made a big name for himself, something like a 98% conviction rate for arresting people like that. And around 1973 or 74, they made a TV movie called Toma about this guy, about a cop in Newark. And then a little bit later, right after that, Tony Masanti played him, if that rings a bell for anybody. They made it was a monthly movie of the week TV show. There was Columbo, and there was one with Dennis Weaver, and it was Toma. You know, McLeod.
Yeah.
And there was one called Toma. Well, here's the funny thing. My godfather, Jerry, was legitimately my godfather. You know, he was at my baptismal, he was holding me over the thing. Well, the woman, my father's sister, my Aunt Pat, as my godmother, is married to Dave Toma. So on one side of my family, I got, you know, this little angel going, oh, do the right thing. And on the other side, I got my godfather Jerry going, fuck them. And so David Toma is my uncle. And David Toma is a very great person. I believe that. He was invited to come here tonight, but he's way too cool, so I guess. But he only lives a few minutes away, so I won't tell you where.
He lives in Clark.
Yeah, I know he does.
Yeah, I just blow it.
What street?
I know he does.
That I don't know.
Conger Way, but you didn't hear that from me. But Dave, yes, ma'am.
How did you get involved?
Me? I was born into it. My father came out of World War II, trained to do certain things, and he you know, how can I put it? His brother was worked for the pipe fitters union, and we were connected to the, back then it was the Lucky Luciano family, which then, when Lucky was exiled to Sicily before I was born, it became the Genovese family for northern New Jersey, which my father and my uncle, and then of course my godfather, my cousin Jerry, became part of. So I just happened to be born into it. And back then, it wasn't like, you know, they told you about it. You just grew up in a family where my mom and all my aunts had the exact same fur coats. All the kids had the exact same bicycles. All of them had the exact same washing machine because they all came off the exact same truck. You know, and that's how it worked.
I just thought of something.
Uh-oh.
No. You mentioned like Lucky Luciano and everything like that. Did you ever go back in the ancestry, if you will? Because now with Boardwalk Empire running, and the whole
That's all supposed to be the Lyle Lansky, all that,
right.
You know, early, way before even my family.
That was
got
the
involved.
20s.
Yeah. My father wasn't born until 25.
Right,
so,
but the
you know.
minute you said Lucky Luciano,
Yeah.
because they have him
But
portrayed
you know, he's
here.
the one who actually started. He organized the gangs and made them the Five Families.
Right. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I noticed that in the back cover that you've written other books and did journalism.
I never wrote the books. Screenplays.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Can you talk about that, your writing background? Because you're a real writer, obviously.
I mean, there's nothing really much to talk about. For a brief period of time, while I was a musician, I wrote for the Herald News, which is a newspaper up around Clifton, Passaic, in the late 70s. Actually, after I stopped doing the Vegas trips, I was a musician, and I just always enjoyed writing from the high school newspaper and stuff like that. And I always knew, you know, as you'll see in the book, I always knew what was happening in Vegas. And then my life with these guys after the Vegas trips ended in '77. I always felt it was a great story, but I couldn't tell it until 3 people were dead. So I started writing the manuscript. I left New Jersey, moved to Los Angeles, finished writing the book there, and realized that Los Angeles does not sell books. Los Angeles sells screenplays. And the day I was told this news, I always remember talking about it. It was January. It was the end of January, somewhere around January 30th. And I had called up my mom that day, and it was 27 degrees in New Jersey, and it was the opposite. It was 72 degrees in LA. And I was told, if you want to sell the manuscript, go back to New Jersey. Otherwise, learn how to write screenplays. 27, 72. I'll learn how to write screenplays, and that's what I did. And I've worked for some studios and stuff like that. Nothing big.
Let me ask you another thing too. Can you talk a little bit about the dichotomy of some of the most evil, sociopathic mob guys?
I'm happy to. People
There's-
ask me all the time. So I
there's
was go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry. Okay.
No, go
No,
ahead.
they're some of the most charming people, aren't they? And if,
Nicest guys in the world.
if people didn't know what they did,
Let me
give or
tell you
take-
about the worst people in the world I know.
Okay.
After I got out of the music business, I got a job in the corporate world. And for 13 years, I worked in the corporate world and because I did not have a college degree, I only had about 3 semesters of college, I worked my way up into a level where normally you had to either have a bachelor's or a master's because of what I did and my ability to be able to stand up in front of people and sell programs to thousands of people at one time. I achieved a level of title, salary, that people who did 4 and 6 years of college normally had to go through. And I was making tens, hundreds of millions of dollars for a couple of big New York City insurance companies. And people ask me all the time, why'd you leave the corporate world? Because the meanest, nastiest, backstabbingest people I ever met in my life were the corporate executives that I worked for. They made the mob guys I know look like saints. So those are the worst people I know. The ones that wear suits, and the ones that let's put it to you real bluntly. Handful of years ago, they ran their billion-dollar companies into the ground, and they got you people to bail them out, and they still got to keep their jobs and $100 million salaries. Can you imagine being a mob guy and going to your boss and going, I don't know, I blew all the money. Can you bail me out? Yeah, they'll bail them out.
I had a question. Millicent, your love interest, or seemingly like the most important female character in the book. Do you ever see her again?
Never saw her again.
Never saw her.
Never saw her after the British Secret Service came and took her away from me.
That was it.
That was it. I have Googled her. I have done whatever I could, and I cannot find a thing.
Wow.
So, you want to know about Millicent? Read the book.
Yeah.
Do you have a family?
Boy, that's like a really open-ended question. I mean, you ask a guy affiliated with the mob, you got a family or you got a family, you know.
Did you have kids?
No, I have no kids. I was very smart. My dad passed away in like 1994. Because of my dad, I cannot watch the New York Giants play football. My father never bet. My father never bet on a football game in his life. My father never bet. In Vegas, in Atlantic City, he would put $20 down on a crap table. He'd lose, and he would have he'd just like get so pissed off. My father was not a betting man. But he had one problem, my father. He would scream at the TV. He would watch football games and yell. Football games, baseball, basketball, he loved watching sports. And he would get so involved in the game. Jesus Christ, what the hell did you do that for? And he would curse at the TV. The end of January 1994, the Giants were in the Super Bowl. They were ahead at halftime. 3-4 minutes before the game ended, they blew the game, had a heart attack and died. It's all right. It happened real fast. It's, you know, but he was having fun. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? So that was my dad. My mom today lives very comfortably in San Jose, California, and I'm an only child. So there you go.
No, I meant, did you yourself have a family?
No. Too much trouble. Had a couple of wives, had a couple of houses, but that's a whole other story. You know.
Next book.
No, I ain't gonna write about that.
No, he's not even going there.
So is that it, anybody? I hope you enjoy the book if you buy it. We also have CDs to go, music CDs to go with the book, so enjoy it, and I'm here to sign whatever you'd like, and thank you very much for coming. What?
Us first.
First what? Well, you don't have one. Go see the man. Or the lady.
Can I take this one?
Well, you can take one and then go see her.
Yeah.
You want me to? Thank you for sticking around.
You are absolutely trying,
Thank you.
and I just love all the subject matter. So really have to know what I do for all kinds of reasons.
Oh,
All kinds of reasons.
You're more than welcome to call me and I'll talk about anything you
Yeah,
want to talk
yeah.
about.
So we'll communicate.
Please.
Okay.
Please. Thank you so very much.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Now,
Did
we-
you enjoy that?
Yeah, I'm a Jersey City girl. So nice to meet you.
You're a there you go, Jersey City girl. He's a Hudson County boy. He's a Union City cop, this guy. Thank you for coming.
Can I take one more picture? It didn't come out great.
What do you want? You want to take a look at the camera? Hold the book up.
Doctors, when we can I give you tests?
How'd it come out? Come out good?
If you post it on just no, it's terrible.
Here, take it with my camera and I'll email it.
Yeah, well, you have a nice one on your camera. Let me try one more. Just one more.
Come on, you know.
Smile like I'm not annoying the crap out of you.
You're not.
You gotta do it one more time. I don't know why.
It's okay, it's okay. You're not
I
busting,
want a
you're
good
not
picture. It's a
bothering
good
me.
moment for you. You were excited. I want a good picture.
Come closer, maybe closer.
I don't know what it is. Let's see.
The flash is not going off, just so you know.
Excuse me, John, I'm gonna go. Thanks a lot, that was fun.
Thank you very, very much.
That
Ah, there you go.
was great, but you were great, it was really
Thank
enjoyable.
you very, very
I'm
much.
gonna really enjoy this.
I appreciate. Yes, please let me know.
I may ask you some questions. Mine's a photography book with interviews,
I
but
insist.
I still left the mark.
I insist.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
All right, good luck with this.
Thank you. Thank you
Great.
very much. What's his name? Angela.
I was sitting the whole time going, I'm full of sick like How are you? Good, good. Sometimes it's better not to be there.
Good? Do it again.
Open your eyes, the best one. Two. Right, Barrett? Good.
Thank you. You're gonna be my shill. Every time you're gonna be my David Coleman question. Thank you.
You have your book there?
There's a bunch of people here that listen. You can't help it.
They had us spend $6,000. They tied the whole freaking thing up. That's why some kind of got rid of it. They had to move the damn thing out.
They only used it for the
Mike was not for the first show, when they first went to see
You know what they did?
Wait a minute, she wanted it
And
first.
they bought a storefront and it had a Elizabeth online storefront. Made it look like
You gave me one. Oh, that's right. Thank you, yes.
They lost lots of
John Diamond. Anytime this guy's here, please.
No, that guy has a good business. Everybody goes there.
He's got me one of these doors. No more reporting. And you couldn't have it.
I had a very great day here today. Thank you so
I'm gonna say goodbye to him, just in case they're out saying again.
Yes.
I'll just say goodbye to you.
You should be my body.
I swear to God, how much you want back? He's dead now. He was like 19. Don't you think it's 19? They did that, yeah. Yes, sir. Ex-store. Well, here, you're in the library. I'm serious.
Take a picture.
Oh, look, you're getting pictures of John Diamond.
I didn't know.
You took 2 minutes to take a
I will. If I go to be continued. Get on. Okay. All right.
It is. Oh, get it.
I think she was
Take on all, come back to the Georgia Beach.
I took my card. I backed up on this my old date. I backed up and hit a freaking bar. So I can't get
This woman just signed a book for guys and girls.
I want to sign, that's all I want to sign.
If I'm buying a book, yes,
I want to sign that.
The woman, she just broke out. I just signed a nice. She's one of the sisters. My hair's gonna curl.
I told her about all the book readings today, and she came to do it.
She wish you reads about the women. Maybe she'll change it. I'm not wearing this thing.
Mystery detectives.
It's not all this, I don't want to hear it. It's not all this.
So what you think?
They drive safe.
You look yellow. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I gotta watch my foot out. I gotta be careful, so that's why I gotta. Don't worry about the jacket.
Hurry up, let's go. After you went down.
After you, I think he should make yours. Enjoy the dinner. We have a craving for cappuccino.
I want to drink. I don't want to go.
That's code for what?
That's code for what? That's code for I want a cappuccino.
You want one here?
You enjoyed it.
Do you want a cappuccino here or you want to go somewhere?
No, I think we're gonna go somewhere. I've had like 3 espresso martinis, so a cappuccino is important to soothe the savage beast of my mind going around.
Owl? Which one? The large one?
Do you really want to go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry?
Hey, you know where you go? My aunt used to live up there in this little area. My wife Bertie, Jefferson area, that way. The whole area there. But a while before I was down here. This land, dahlias, flowers there.
I can't think of the name.
I'm gonna go outside with her.
Yeah. Ready? Did you say goodbye to John? Did you say goodbye to John? Huh? John, watch out for this one, man. She got a big mouth.
Which one?
The little one over here, man. Never seen a girl put a hamburger in her mouth. Boom. Man.
I invited her.
John, I'll let you do my friend.
Yes, I promise when I come back.
No, that house you guys have body parts. She's got over cancer, so she's starting to do well.
I'm gonna walk upstairs now, you're gonna wait a while.
Watch out for her. Billy, be good, guy.
Be good, everybody.
My wife wants her at the crib.
I don't know, look at the hair over here.
From Daddy.
I'm not gonna go rob the grave. Take it out now.
Stop talking with my business.
We gonna fight. We gonna fight.
Now you're gonna read it. Do you really?
No, I'm gonna have somebody read it too.
Are you fine? Read the book, Billy?
Yes, you don't.
And it will be me. No, it will not be you. No.
Yeah, I'm
It's more if you sell it on eBay.
Well, I'm figuring they're gonna be chopping up your body and sending it all over. Yeah, that's, actually, I'd like to have you send it to Carla with the K. And then actually, yes, K-R-O. And if you'd like to give me your wallet, so I can give it to you.
That's on my Kindle too. He had sent the book to me.
That's a good idea.
I was like, if I
What
could.
is this down here,
Didn't you watch the Robert Rivera Court guy, Benny Jacket, that stuff 20 times over Jimmy whatever you would like to have.
One of your parents.
Whatever we're doing, make it work for them, you know,
I tell you what happened. I don't know what's wrong. I just hope he's not bullshitting. I don't think he is. I think he's really concerned about the horse.
Okay.
I don't think he would have placed him somewhere.
First thing they're gonna do is go to his right hand.
All I want to do is come over and bring him some apples.
Right,
Like I used to do.
That should
And
be
they
a
don't want
problem.
any visitors.
I can't.
Oh, we don't want visitors. I don't even know their phone number. All I know is he's in the Shannock station somewhere. Who's a horse?
Oh, he was taking care of
He's a
it.
farm by me. I take a wild
And the
walk
horse
every
was
day.
abandoned, so Billy takes him checking to see what.
Yeah, I'm taking him hay.
Because even one of Latifah's friends, he has a big place in Georgia. And so I had to tell him, let me know, because it's an abandoned horse, so they would have paid for the horse to be shipped to him and everything.
He was the problem for that horse. He was so abused. You couldn't do anything with him. You reach out to him, he comes back, you know, you're going to hit him all the time. It took me 2 years for him to finally take carrots or apples out of my hand. When I first started going, I used to throw them to him. And then he eventually came over to me and would take it out of my hand. And even if I brought my hand out too close, he would jump back because I was going to hit him all the time. It took a good 2 years before he finally trusted me to maybe scratch his nose a little bit. Even then, he would only take it for so long and he backed away. He was a coastal pony, you know, the ones that kill in Virginia and North Carolina that run wild. You know when the Spanish came here, right? There were no horses. There were no horses. There were no horses. All the horses in this country died prehistoric times of some disease. And the Indians didn't even know what a horse looked like until the Spanish brought it down. And then a couple of ships sunk off the coast of North Carolina and Virginia, and the horses swam ashore, and they populated those islands. And to this day, you can go to, Virginia and North Carolina and get wild birds that run. And that's what this horse was. He was one of those horses, and he was scheduled for, slaughter. And this farmer adopted him, and he's taking care of him. I don't know, several people over the years adopted the horse. The last people moved out and was left the horse. And he had no food, he had nothing.
I know.
So I was taking care of him the food to find a home
Well,
for
if
him.
this clearly doesn't demonstrate the problem with section of furniture, I don't know what does.
But no, I don't know, T, where it is.
Oh,
All I know is he's in
that's
the Sonic Station somewhere.
yeah, because I was like, that was really sad.
Very good.
Thank you very much. I hope you were entertained.
No, it was good, interesting. I mean, I love the Sopranos. I work in the corporate world for 27 years now, and let me tell you,